What's up, Previews World, and welcome to the new X-Men Roundtable. I'll be very transparent with you guys on this, man. Look, the reason I did the roundtable is because I wanted to talk about this book eventually. This run, this entire series, and I've seen a lot of interesting videos online, and like a lot of retrospectives about this book online. But the thing, I watched one recently that kind of enraged me because I just didn't really think they were hating, basically, you know what I mean? And I didn't think that they really gave the story a chance and gave themselves an opportunity to unpack the story to kind of understand really where it's going, and the influence it has. So yeah, we're going to talk about New X-Men. We're going to talk about it in as much painstaking detail that we can for an hour. This is part one, I want to point out, and then part two will follow up. We'll follow up with part two next week. Again, I've purchased this book a number of times. I own it digitally. I own the oversized hardcovers. I own the single issues. I actually bought the single issues twice. It is my favorite run. It's probably the X-Men run I've read the most, outside of maybe the Dark Phoenix saga from when I was a kid. So with that said, let me introduce our panel. First of all, hailing from Silver Spring, Maryland, Cy Shackelford. What's up, Cy?
How you guys doing?
The mutant master himself. Cy joined us for the House of X conversation. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, he's definitely got a wealth of mutant knowledge like at his disposal. So he's gonna be real clutch here today. Also joining us this week is Josh Mendez, who has also been on the show before. Josh joined us for the Vision episode of the panel. What's going on, Josh?
Hey, having a good time. Super excited to be talking about New X-Men. Grant Morrison is one of my favorite authors out there. So really excited for it.
All right, I see you're fully representing. I like the track jacket. That's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really cool. And last but not least, the madman behind Action to Go himself, Derek Scarzella. What's up, Derek?
Hey, man. Great to be here, and super excited to deep dive into this great story.
All right, cool. So off the bat, real quick, before we dive into this, it is Pride Month. I want to at least get this out of the way right now because I know some people are going to have some thoughts on this or have some issues with this. Look, Morrison mentioned a few months ago that the term non-binary really describes his experience during his formative years, and there's a conventional thinking that once somebody kind of subscribes to being non-binary, right? That you should refer to them as they and them. Now, Morrison in the interview never gave preferred pronouns, and for the sake of conversation, I'm not going to break up the discussion to correct people if they refer to Morrison as him. All right, but we also want to be respectful. I also want to acknowledge this because I know some people will mention this, but I just don't want to disrupt our discussion about this book. We are all Grant Morrison fans. I think that's pretty much a given. So we don't mean to be disrespectful if we refer to Morrison as him, but I'll try to watch it myself, but I'm not asking you guys to do the same. If you forget, you forget. Okay. So, all right, let's get going. Let's get cracking. So what's in your black bug room, guys? Let's start off with E is for Extinction, right? So this is the big one. This started off with X-Men. The previous run of X-Men was 113 issues long. They didn't do a hard relaunch like a number one like they would do today, right? Instead, they kicked it off at 114, and this was the beginning of Grant Morrison's run. Morrison had been doing huge stuff with the Justice League prior to DC. It really primarily had been a DC guy up until this point. And he was joined by Frank Quitely, who had done the Authority previous to that. And this is their opening arc. E is for Extinction. The super team of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely at the controls. It all starts in the steaming jungles of South America, and it ends at the front lines in the war of our genetic future. So here we are. In terms of introductory arcs, what do you guys think of E is for Extinction? And I'll start with you, Josh, because I know you're primed and ready to go.
Oh man, I couldn't believe it. Like just from the first page, when you see it, Wolverine, you can probably stop doing that now with a headless Sentinel. He already cut him off all forms of attack that the android could have, no hands, no head, and still he was going at it. What an opening page. I think that Grant has mentioned before that his one of his idols or inspirations was Jack Kirby, and I think that Grant is able to pull out the Kirby splash page, first page, shocking page, but Jack did it with drawings, and Grant is doing it with words or scenes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that is a great intro, and I think that actually that intro plays very much into the theme of the book. I've heard quite a few people say that before, that opening line of Wolverine, you can probably stop doing that line now, is kind of Morrison's mission statement with the X-Men and during the course of this run. What about you, Cy? What are your thoughts on the introductory art?
Okay, for E's for Extinction, like you, Troy, I thought the very first page when Morrison wrote Wolverine, you can probably stop doing that now. That was probably an end. That I saw that as an end to how the previous way of doing things was, and how Morrison's era of New X-Men. This is going to be a complete relaunch, like you said, not with renumbering, but the whole concept, getting rid of the colorful costumes, and it was really, for me at the time when I bought the issue 114, I was like, "What is this? This is way different than the last issue. The logo is different. The costumes are different. Even the dialogue is kind of choppy." But I'm interested in seeing where this goes. And the introduction of Cassandra Nova in that issue, she is sick. She was a scary villain.
She was excellent. What about you, Derek? What do you think of the introductory art?
Yeah, well, actually, just to hop off of what Cy just said, this book came at a particular time when it was coming off the heels of the movie. Yeah, and I remember seeing the new costumes and thinking to myself, "Wow, this is pretty pandering." So they're just going to rewrite the whole thing based on the movie. You know, that's really weird. But at least that was the first impression I got. But then I actually read it, and again, I was like, "Whoa, this is different. This is really different." And it hit right when I was in high school. But yeah, after rereading it recently, the intro is great, and I think it's unique in that it really puts you in the footsteps of the villain. You know, it's such a great introduction for Cassandra Nova, and you have the Trask character going along like in horror as she takes him into this new dimension. And I think it's sort of a great, analog for the viewer, like the traditional X-Men fan who there you see it right there. It's like playing, Guide to Dante, right? Just showing him this house of horrors, and it just works perfectly. I thought it was great. And it was a great break for tradition. And I think it just does tell the traditional X-Men fan, like, hey, you're in new territory. This is going to be different. Yeah. And it's a real mind freak along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I have always thought was, it wasn't until actually this run that I realized how important it is that the uncanny aspect of the X-Men stay intact. You know what I mean? Like, and I think Morrison tapped into that so strongly. Like, if the X-Men aren't weird, then it's not really the X-Men. And like, that's something that I've kind of that's like I can't accept anything else from them now because of that. Like, if I see someone not doing that, then I'm like, well, I can't read this anymore. What's up, Cy? What are you about to say?
I was going to say, they tried that at the time that New X-Men debuted. I mean, they were trying like tying the theme of the X books together, like Extreme X-Men and Uncanny X-Men with the same theme in the costumes and whatnot. And I remember Uncanny X-Men trying the same level of weirdness, like going into the tunnels of London and talking to like a different form of Morlocks and whatnot. But it's like, you got the costumes on point, but it's like, it's not the same level as New X-Men. New X-Men actually grabs my attention more so than the flagship title, Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What I mentioned also is that, I mean, Joe Casey and of course Chris Claremont are super capable writers, but Grant Morrison was in his own universe writing X-Men. I mean, like, he was in another level. A lot of the things that he brought, like, he was doing X-Men, but he was slightly off looking at everything that you've seen from X-Men, like that Master Mold perspective that you've seen in South America. It's the similar cover that Master Mold appeared in the first time, but you're looking at it from a different point of view, right? And that's kind of like his whole run. I will have Sentinels, but not like the regular Sentinels. We will have wild Sentinels, guys that are really able to adapt to whatever it is, right? And you can see these weird guys, like if they are Velociraptors from Jurassic Park, right? Like, that's the first thing that I noticed. Like, these guys are really a threat. The second thing that he also mentioned is that he moved forward the title, right? With the humans are going to be extinct by the next fourth generation,
Yeah.
and then the humans are going to be the dominant species about it, and it's kind of like a very good metaphoric way of saying like the geek culture will be taking over the world, and this was back in 2001, and it became true, right? The geek culture has taken over the world with the many Marvel and DC movies and series and whatnot. Everybody's a mutant per se.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
And just to hop off that, I just wanted to add some context for some people, like having grown up in the era when this came in. This was sort of coming on the coattails of the 90s, back when the X-Men and all the variant forms of the X-Men were Marvel's strongest sellers, right?
Yep.
Like this is when the X-Men were the premier team, were carrying Marvel. The Avengers at this point were really an also ran. Iron Man was not that popular compared to like Wolverine. So, and still Superman and Batman. So I just wanted to give people that context as well. So just to give you an idea of what Grant Morrison was remixing at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And I know we're going to deep dive into this. He really was predicting the future with this comic in a lot of ways as well. But just to give you an idea, this was like he was like recutting the Beatles or something.
Yeah, it was.
Like the X-Men was it, X-Force, all sorts of titles you can go back and look at. But he was messing with like the Coca-Cola formula at this point.
No, he really was. No, you're right. That's a great way of putting it. Mystical Green Beanie, who will be joining us for the part 2. Such a great inaugural issue. Really sets the tone for the run. It really does, 100%. I mean, like this is like the first issue that I look back on to understand how you should create a first issue. You know what I mean?
Everything was different in the sorry to cut you off, Troy.
No, good.
Yeah, everything was different in this issue compared to what was in 113, because that was the final part of the Eve of Destruction storyline.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And like you see 114, you see Jean Grey and Beast having a conversation, and Beast looks like Tony the Tiger on steroids.
Right.
And Xavier gets like a new Cerebro that's more powerful than the original one. It's like, what happened in the month between that? But I'm still interested. I still want to look.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So you guys did talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh. What were you about to say?
Something that I wanted to add, like this shocked me. On this second rereading of it, I was really amazed on the way that he's writing, because he gives us a lot of flash forwards in his dialogue of what's coming, right? Like Cyclops Beast at some point mentions that Professor Xavier is still hurt for all the losses that they have, but until before New X-Men 114, like the only deaths that there were Liliandra and a couple of mutants, right? There was not an event as big as this one, maybe even Mutant Massacre, but like he was giving us hints of what was going to come in the next few issues. And the same thing for the mutations, the same thing for there is going to be some bacteria or something very dangerous that was going to attack the mutants. I was like really shocked. Like he was preparing us for what was coming. So when we were able to see it, like our brain had already in the back of our brain, we were already having that information. The second thing that caught my attention is the usage of color. I don't know if you guys have realized about this, but whenever Xavier is present, he's always when he's using his powers, it's always a blue color that is covering everywhere. When Cassandra Nova appears, it's a red one. So that means like that Jean Jan, that they are struggling and that they are fighting. But then check this out, man. I was blown away. When we are the first image that we see of Cerebra, you can see like the orb there, and there is a hint of red on top of it. Like the danger is already there. Cassandra Nova is crawling already there. It's on the corner of the point. And then you see the first introduction of Jean Grey in this run, when she's carrying over some cans of soda for Beast. The color is purple. So think about it, guys. Like blue and red, you get purple, right? So for me, the at least what I interpreted out of it is like Cassandra Nova is super powerful. Of course, Xavier is the most powerful telepath, but Jean Grey is the most powerful between the both of them, because she was able to join it. And I was like, maybe I'm just looking too much into stuff. But then I realized about Kid Omega. What's his hair color? And he was already it's purple. So these two guys were already super powerful. So all of these things that he's introducing in his run and I was super amazed that like these type of things you don't see them in everyday comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he actually coined the term for a lot of things that were happening at the time, like the secondary mutation, which he coined, by the way, that had been happening in the 90s with people like Danny Moonstar or even Legion, technically.
Mm-hmm.
And he introduced a lot of concepts that are still hold strong even to this day.
Oh yeah. I mean, actually, I was going to actually open this by saying this is like your favorite X-Men writer's favorite X-Men run. Like, I feel like that's kind of a given at this point.
Yeah.
Like, people have been, I don't want to say biting, but like people have been definitely like lifting from this run all the way up until the present. Like, I mean, like you saw that silent issue by Jonathan Hickman and Russell Dauterman for Giant Size X-Men. It's a direct lift from the Nuff Said issue by Morrison and Quitely.
And Joss Whedon himself said when he was writing Astonishing X-Men, he said, "It's Chris Claremont's world, but it's Grant Morrison's sandbox that I'm playing in."
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of things that were predicted, right? One of the things that has always blown me away about this book, and this is one of those moments where I'm like, is Grant Morrison magic? Is actually the issue where Genosha gets destroyed. Because the wild thing about this is, while the book came out in June, I believe it was June of 2001, it carries a date of August 2001. And the first image we see is from the scene of destruction is a plane flying into Magneto Citadel. And then the subsequent page is a big splash page of people running from this destruction, you know? Yeah. And keep in mind that 1 month later from the print date, it was September 11th. And I've always been blown away by that. Like, I've always been like, wow, like what kind of like space-time, like, you know what I mean? Like, thing has he tapped into that, like, somewhere in his mind, like, him and Frank Quitely visualized this, and then it actually happened in real life. That's really strange to me. And like, I've always been kind of floored by that. Did you guys notice the costumes in the Dark Phoenix movie? Nope.
Dark Phoenix movie.
Oh yeah. Oh my! When I saw the first image, I was so excited. I thought that they were going to do E's for Extinction, and I was like, "All right, finally a great X-Men movie!" And then it was just a flop.
It's Fox. It's Fox.
It's Fox.
Great about the X-Men movies.
Before we move on to the next thing, actually, the next arc, let's talk about Quitely's artwork real quick. Like, guys, like, what do you think of Quitely's artwork? Because I know, look, so I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna snitch on Johnny real quick. Johnny said something that I've heard a lot of people say. Right, this run is divisive, and one of the reasons it's divisive is because some people don't like Quitely's artwork. Right, and I've heard that criticism quite a few times that that's the barrier to entry for a lot of people. But I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on Quitely's artwork. Go for it, Derek.
I mean, people just must not like good artwork, you know. Sometimes you need to look in the mirror and just admit it's your fault. Like, it's the problem is you, and just move on from it. No, but in all seriousness, I always had a conspiracy theory about Frank Quitely that he always knew when the run was going to be good or bad, because he would just hop on the good stuff and then let other artists handle the other stuff that he and not that the rest of the run is bad when he's not on it, but when him and Morrison are working together, the synergy is just there so much. It's really weird. Like, it's weird how good their stuff is when they're on the boil. Like, just to jump off to another project they had called We Three.
Yeah. Oh yeah, wow.
It's a short comic book run about
issues,
a couple of animals that get turned into war machines and are able to communicate with each other. And please trust me, it's amazing. And they did stuff in that comic that I haven't seen anybody else able to replicate except a couple times, and not even as well. So, but that's really down to Frank Quitely being able to crystallize the craziness that is Grant Morrison storytelling. Because I've read a lot of Grant Morrison work, and I think a lot of artists have trouble keeping up with him, and it's usually the reverse when it comes to that relationship. But Frank Quitely is one of those guys where, between the precision of his art and the way he interprets it and the way he forms it, it just crystallizes this crazy stuff that you could get lost in if a lesser artist is handling it. And I don't want to mention names, but sometimes that shows up in this run when other artists are handling the work. You're scratching your head like, ooh, this is sort of getting lost in the shuffle. But every issue is great. I highly recommend reading it, obviously. But just wanted to throw that out there. His precision and the use of color as well. There's some sort of secret sauce here that other artists aren't able to replicate.
No, I think that's something that people forget a lot about is that, like, you know, it's the marriage between the artist and writer, and like when they're clicking, like it doesn't matter anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just let them take you with you. Anybody else want to chime in on Quietly's artwork before we move forward?
Yeah, I do. When I met you, Troy, back in 2004, when you were working at the desk of Alliance Comics, we hadn't been formally introduced yet. But I remember I chimed in on a conversation that you and this other girl were having in the store at the time about Frank Quietly's artwork, comparing it to Jim Lee's. And you brought up a point that I thought was very valid, which is why I like Frank Quietly's artwork too, because he tries to make them look in real world dimensions. Like Cyclops, he's skinny, not muscular like Jim Lee used to make him, you know?
Right, yeah.
And Wolverine, he's got muscles on him too, yeah, but it's like, okay, he's supposed to have muscles even with his short stature. But yeah, I like what he does. He makes him look real to me. Like, that's Scott is tall and thin. Jean is slightly shorter than him. Yeah, it's proportional.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Josh? Anything you want to throw out there?
Oh man, he's my second best artist of all time. Jack Kirby being number one.
I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, since I think that the first thing that I read about him was that Kingdom number with Mark Waid, where he talks about Offspring. I think that I was so into Alex Ross back then and Kingdom Come, and he was the only one that was able to really translate the designs of those great characters into a monthly comic. And then seeing him on New X-Men, on Authority, how he was able to design thousands of costumes for a lot of different characters and how he was able to make them their own. And then seeing him on X-Men, I was super excited to see them with the costumes. For me, it was a little bit downer to see them in the black costumes, but I was like, oh, what the hell? The story is amazing. I'm not having the costumes as I was expecting, but we're having these Wild Sentinels. We're having all of these different designs with Cassandra Nova, how she's able to design her own kind of armor, how he was able to visualize when Cassandra burns out Wolverine's arm and they regenerate it. Oh my God, I was thinking, this is a Terminator Logan, right?
Right. Yeah.
I have already seen Andy Kubert do a great job on X-Men 25 when Magneto rips out the adamantium out of him. But nowhere, but not even those pages, I felt like the pain that Wolverine had when his arm was being burned out. I mean, that was amazing. The composition that he has, every single artist that was doing the silent issue is amazing. But I think that Frank Quietly and even John Romita Jr. in Hulk were some of the best ones out of that bunch.
Yeah. No, they did knock out that silence. I think, like, if you want a proof of, there you go. If you want proof of, I mean, just look at that. Like, it looks like it's moving. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want proof of how good of an artist Frank Quietly is, the silent issue is just kind of like the mic drop. You know what I mean? Like it's just like boom, I'm done. And then they do it
into that because I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the agenda is. I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just to hop off of Josh's point about the detail work, and that's what makes Quietly's work really stand out. But there's only a few other artists that are able to do that. You know, for instance, one was like Frank Cho, and someone pointed this out to me, and you can always use this as sort of a hack to determine whether an artist is really good or not. Not to be too rough on those guys; they're all good. But there's a part of I think it's Sheena the She-Devil or something. Shauna, there you go, Shauna the She-Devil. And there's a 2-panel spread where there's like an ocean of raptors and one T-Rex. And if you look at that panel, you'll notice that every raptor is actually different. It's not just cut and paste. Every one has its own articulation. And that's what Frank Quietly is able to bring to the table as well. In terms of every costume you mentioned is different. Like that's a special talent, and that's where the real talent is with these artists. So when you see that, you know you're dealing with a really good artist. You
get the real deal. I love that. Let's touch on Man from Room X real quick. Any thoughts on the storyline? This, of course, is the introduction of Zorn. It is a vertical issue, which is actually kind of interesting and kind of different. But Marvel was doing this, I think, across the board for their annuals at the time. Yeah. So, what do you guys think of the Man from Room X? No spoilers. because there's some setup here. But just real quick, what do you think of that story?
Well, I'll dive in with spoiler-free stuff real quick. Sorry, but I thought it was really interesting because we're talking about China so much, and this really is like it takes place in China, and there's some political stuff being said here about that. And I don't know if it was prescient or not in that sense, but it's a really great example of an X-Men story. Like they're going to a different culture, they're sinking into it, and it's just even though it's not new, it felt new.
You're right, yeah.
It felt like a different direction. I really appreciated that little run, and I think it's one of the best character introductions of any X-Man, maybe Marvel character I can really think of.
I'm also a big fan of Domino and Wolverine hooking up. I don't know, like I normally don't care about that stuff, but I was very amused by Wolverine just kind of like smelling the air that Domino is in and be like, "You want some company later?" I just thought that was hilarious. What about you, Josh? What do you think of the Man from Room X?
Again, I'm not saying that the movies are bad, but I think that when they filmed the first James Bond movie with what's these guys? The new James Bond. I forgot.
Daniel Craig.
With Daniel Craig, I think that the first movie was totally. They gave this comic away to people. This is what action has to look like in a James Bond movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Like you can put together. Look at that. I mean, this page screams action, even though it's a still image, right? Francis Lane Liu, fantastic, phenomenal artist. I wish that they would have done some more new X-Men comics with him because he was available at the time. And this is a great book because you have the chemistry, the romance part with Emma and Scott here, and then you have the action part with Domino and Wolverine. So if you put those four together, you get a couple of any James Bond and whatever partner he has.
Absolutely. Sai, did you want to chime in at all?
Yes, I do. For the new X-Men annual, I remember picking that up in Bethesda and reading it at what used to be Bethesda Metro Station, what used to be their food court, mind you, in the summer of 2001 in the morning. Yeah, and at the widescreen portion, that blew me away. It's like, this is new. Yeah. And the concepts in there as well, too. I mean, like, apart from Domino and Wolverine hooking up, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised you never got it on with Cable, but Wolverine will do. And the whole concept about the U-Men, when Derek mentioned that they were going to a different culture in China, right? And the U-Men, they're a cult, a different culture entirely. Like, and they want to be mutants so badly, but and not to give any spoilers away, but they are homicidal about their desire to be mutants. I thought that was a really cool concept. It's like, why y'all want to be mutants for? What y'all want to be a persecuted minority for?
Well, it's, I think the outing of Xavier kind of like created like the end of Eve for Extinction, the outing of Xavier kind of created this domino effect. You know what I mean? That like permeates like the Marvel universe, which we get to see a lot more in, especially in the next arc, which is Germ-Free Generation. So Germ-Free Generation is interesting because it actually, let me do the quick synopsis. Rising human infertility rates, mutant births on the increase, and a genetic code that programs the human race to self-destruct within a few generations. These are the secrets exposed in the Extinction dossier, the final research of Moira McTaggart, which is interesting, right? Now mutant militancy explodes as the human-mutant dynamic is seemingly turned on its ear. What, if anything, can the X-Men do to control this situation? Plus, the introduction of the all-new Angel. So, all right, we really get into the U-Men stuff with this story, right? But I want to ask you guys, this, for me personally, these are two of my favorite new X-Men characters, Beacon Angel, because they're so off the beaten path, and I think it's one of them says this in the book. It's like, oh, the X-Men are like the sexy mutants, they're not ugly like me, like that's the thing that's like said during the course of this. So what do you guys think of Beacon Angel? Because they definitely kind of come together over the course of the story.
Sorry.
What's up? I'll let you go, Josh, while Derek handles that.
I really love this issue, man. Like, again, I was like, this title played with my emotions every month. I was pissed off because Frank Whiteley is not drawing. What the hell is going on? And then I saw Ethan Van Sciver. Oh my God, yeah, okay. I'm cool, right? This artist really has his thing going on. I really love the fact that how he was able to incorporate like those fear type of things into the book. He did it with in Arkham Asylum, and you can see this page where Xavier is giving where Xavier already is giving that threat to Henry, and he's just playing with his mind.
Yeah.
How he's able to defeat very easily one of the most smartest mutants in the world. The design of Angel and Vic, it was amazing, right? Like, because you have this type of people that were like in a lower social from their own countries. If I'm not mistaken, Vic was from England, and they were like low class, right? They weren't like high-end mutants like Emma Frost, which was made of diamond, and Phantom X, which was a super suave guy. You have like these two regular kids, but like you really care and root for them. And then seeing this page really blew my mind away, man. Knowing that Frank was going to incorporate the sheer into its run, I was super excited for it.
Oh yeah.
And then this one, I think that I'm not sure if everybody's here. Spoilers alert for everybody, but it's already a 20-year book.
All right.
The sex issue, man. The sex issue was amazing.
Oh yeah, can you explain the story behind that real quick?
Oh yeah, so like the story goes that Ethan Van Sciver read about a book that you could incorporate stuff hidden into whatever, right? Movies, TV series, and he did it for books. So he hid the word sex in almost every page of this issue. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this one here.
Might not, you're just a little pixelated, so we might not be able to see.
All right. So maybe we can include the pictures later on. But he hid the word sex in every single page of this book. And he was like super nervous, like, okay, I'm just waiting for people to realize and see what's going on. A month passed, 2 months passed, and nobody realized about it. So he had to call up Wizard and say, hey, I did this. And Wizard was the one that published that and that's great and not so great, because he was fired from Marvel because of this, right? Because that's why he was not able to continue. Otherwise, we would have seen a little bit more of Ethan Van Sciver later on the run. But I mean, it's amazing that you are able to pull it out in a monthly superhero title in front of everyone's, and nobody realized about it.
And that's kind of funny that Marvel fired him for that, because I mean, like in that, like also in like one of the Van Sciver issues, there's like this whole thing with like this kid who read the U-Men book, and he's like a school shooter, and then like the teenage kid gets shot right in the head, like right on panel, right? Like, so it's like, all right, I mean, it goes back to that whole like, which is more offensive, sex or violence, right? Sometimes just the word, sometimes just the word sex. All right, let's jump ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Did you have anything you want to say about this particular arc before we jump ahead?
I was going to say that, off of what Josh said about the X-Men being the pretty mutants, he's right, because the Beak, he looks like a punk rock music lover from Amsterdam, and the Angel, she's a mixed race girl from the trailer park, and their powers, like what's it called? Beak is actually a bird with an actual squawking beak, and the Angel has the powers of Seth Brundle, pretty much. And I thought the Germ-Free Generation was a good concept, and also with the U-Men as well too, with their attack on the mansion, and Jean Grey, what she did there, that was so fun to watch.
If I remember correctly, we also get the introduction of Dust during this storyline. I remember a few years ago. Oh, that was later. Was that the next arc? That might have been New Worlds.
It was after the Phantom X introduction. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, so yeah, no, another great arc. It's actually probably one of the more entertaining ones of this run for me, just because like it kind of like just a lot of cool ideas are getting tossed out. Derek, did you have something you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I just sorry about the phone interrupting everything, but I just wanted to say real quick, just to jump off that. To me, that's the best part of this run overall, because when you think about the X-Men objectively, it's like, oh wow, I'm really pretty. And I can shoot laser beams out of my eyes, or I can move stuff with my mind and stuff. This really takes the horror aspect of the X-Men and puts it on full display. Like, what if you were just ugly? You know what I mean? Or
right.
Have the guy with three faces early in the run, and then it just hammers that home so good. But it humanizes these characters, and it still manages to make them interesting.
Yeah.
The point where I'm not sure if we're discussing this part of it, but with Zorn's class, right? it's like the most interesting stuff that's going on there. It's not necessarily what's going on with the X-Men. It's like, wow, being a mutant might actually suck and not be awesome. And what happens when it does suck?
Right.
You know what I mean? And it just takes the X-Men to a different, in my opinion, where it's never gone before, unless you look at like the Morlocks a little bit. But even then, it was probably a bit more stereotypical compared to like what's the day-to-day life of being a ostracized, mutated person sort of thing. So I just want to hammer that home.
It's normalized now.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. The ugly mutant is normalized now.
All right. So let's jump ahead to Imperial, right? So first of all, did you catch this? So Imperial kind of ends with a climactic return of Cassandra Nova, and like it's just balls to the wall, just like absolute insanity. I mean, this page alone, like you talk about the horror aspects. There's a lot of body horror in this story before before body horror was even a term. Like, you know what I mean? And I just love that about that. And one of the things they mentioned early on is this concept of the Mamumdrai, right? This the evil spirits, the evil self of Charles Xavier that he faces in the womb, right? Did you guys catch any of that? Like, what did you think about that? I just thought that was absolutely nuts and pretty interesting.
Well, go ahead.
Go for it, Josh.
Sorry. So when you're looking at, let me go back to New X-Men 116, when Cassandra Nova has that revelation and she returns to the X-Mansion and twists the neck around of Cassandra Nova. And yes, you see that panel where she's crawling out of Cerebra and she's just mumbling stuff. But when you read it in the context of already what's going to happen, she's saying, I'm Xavier. No, don't do it. And you don't catch it the first time because he was just in our faces, like he was telling us already what was going to happen, and then having that revelation about Cassandra Nova trapping Xavier into her own body and leaving him there. Oh my God, that was like a again looking at things that have already happened before, but looking at them from a new perspective. We already knew that Xavier was trapped in his own body, but not being able to walk. But trapping him in a body that couldn't even function, that's even worse, right? So that's how Morrison takes things to a new level.
Absolutely.
He has Cassandra Nova think of everything. Like, not only did she trap Xavier inside of her body, but she booby-trapped it with a bunch of old people's diseases. Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's.
Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, dementia, and as Emma Frost put it, it's like his brain's going to be ground up into confetti by the end of the week.
It's just so wild. It's such a wild run, and this is the stuff I eat up. Like, I love this book so much. Actually, one of the things I hear a lot is people complain about that Morrison ignored continuity, right? And I've heard that a lot from people. But here's the thing, like I normally like kind of like, well, whatever. Like, I was kind of always dismissive of that. Just because like my whole thing is, every writer kind of picks and chooses what they want to pay attention to and what they don't want to utilize, but upon my 15th reading of this run, I kind of noticed like, no, there are some nice little callbacks to things that have happened in X-Men history. Like there is like a reference to Onslaught. There is a reference to like, Moira and Xavier's relationship. So we can totally see you, Liz. We can totally see you.
I was going to say, what's it called? You're right about the callbacks that Morrison makes and not ignoring continuity. And this is a callback to the new X-Men annual. He included Risque up in there, the X-Force character. I up until that point, she hadn't been seen in a good 4 years.
No, she hadn't, right. No. I've got Liz nonsense going on in the background. Sorry.
Well, I'll just jump in real quick. And I was so neck deep into X-Men at this point. Like, again, it was my formative years. I was a kid. I was gobbling up everything X-Men at that time. Mm-hmm. But you can tell by reading this, you have to have a real love of X-Men to be able to deconstruct it this well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like he really, and I remember Onslaught, I remember being so into the Onslaught run and what they did then. But yeah, just like, look at this image. Yeah. I mean, Morrison's at his best when he's playing with reality, but he's also literally turning the X-Men in on themselves.
Yeah.
For this story. And the whole idea of him having, or Xavier going up against Cassandra in the womb, like literally, like Cassandra's literally his shadow.
Yeah.
His shadow self. And that's what the entire team has to deal with. And the concept of the most powerful mind in the world going nuts and going evil. Again, look at that image. Oh my
God.
Oh my
Like,
God.
it's just-
That image was fantastic.
Enough said.
If I can just mention something really quick, I don't know how to describe the many levels of symbolism that this single image has. The only thing that I can think about it, the visuals, the only thing that comes to my mind is like that movie, The Cell with Jennifer Lopez, that they get inside of the mind of a criminal. Like this is the type of things that he was doing. I don't think that there was anything visually on any comics around this time that was on this level of thinking. Like, this is showing you daddy, mommy issues, family issues, frustration, incapability. You see the mannequins, they're so twisted, man. And horror and sci-fi were a huge influence into his entire run. Like he has mentioned previously in interviews, right? Like he was going, Justice League was more plot oriented, but this one was more character oriented. And he was giving us so many great moments with each individual X-Men character that he touched upon. And definitely this is one of the most important issues that you have seen about Xavier and Jean Grey alone.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
That upset issue is like perfect.
Yeah.
What do we think about Emma as a team member?
Who is a team member?
Emma Frost.
Oh,
Like
Love
Emma kind of like, puts her stamp on being a member of the team in this run, in this particular arc. So like, yeah, what do you guys think of Emma?
Well, just to go ahead, Sai.
I was going to say that her coming off from Generation X, I mean, that was her first start on being on the quote unquote side of the angels, right?
Right.
And having Morrison, I mean, Emma's always been like a woman with a very caustic wit on her, right? In fact, one of the letters in a Generation X issue described her as a cruel but knowledgeable master telepath. Morrison, he took that and just like had her just like made it so that she has no chill, but she's still a good guy pretty much. It's like she was her and Beast, they were the most interesting members of Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men. I mean, because when Cassandra Nova, when she attacked Beast and just brought forth the idea that your power is that you're devolving. I mean, you were a simian, then you were an ape, now you're a saber-tooth tiger. What you going to be next? A worm? A virus? And that made Beast very self-conscious about himself, comparing himself to Gregor Samsa from The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, saying, am I going to turn into a giant bug when I wake up one morning?
See?
Yeah.
No, Morrison does his research, man. Like, I think that's the other thing I really appreciate about him is like, the people sit here and say like, oh, he ignores continuity, but no, he does his research. Like, I think actually one of the unfortunate things, this is all hearsay, but one of the unfortunate things from my understanding and from what I've heard is that Chris Claremont kind of hated what Grant Morrison was doing because he was stepping on everything that Chris Claremont was trying to do simultaneously in Extreme X-Men. There was definitely a tug of war because apparently Morrison wanted to have Storm in the comic. And so there's not a lot of Storm in New X-Men because she was an Extreme X-Men by Claremont. And I think that's really unfortunate because it really is. And I've seen this in Morrison's manifesto in one of the omnibus. It really is a love letter to the X-Men. Like he openly admits like he was tearing up at the end of the Dark Phoenix saga. Like, you know what I mean? And this was like his like love letter to that particular John Byrne era.
And a side note, Claremont, at the time, Claremont and Extreme X-Men, people talk about Morrison ignoring continuity. Not Claremont, he ignored continuity blatantly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that run was not good.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't at all.
Yeah.
I mean, him bringing Sunspot and Magma back and ignoring anything that's been done to them in the previous writers since, in favor of what he was doing when he wrote them. It's like, nah, dude, nah.
Yeah. Well, just to jump off that, like I know they rebranded Emma Frost as the leader of Generation X, and I guess turned her into a reluctant good guy. But he also redefines her even further.
Yeah, he does.
It solidifies her character for the next 20 years. As far as I can tell, which isn't a short time in comic book history, but yeah, he was also upending. Was it 40 years of continuity with this run. Like, actually go back to the beginning of the 60s, and it was like Scott and Jean Grey, like whatever they had going on, and then Madeline Pryor, sure, what Chris Claremont did. But he completely redefines the X-Men for 20 years.
Yeah.
End of discussion. And he made Emma Frost into this dynamic, like world-destroying character that sort of rivals the Phoenix almost in terms of X-Men and what they are.
Right.
She's fun to watch.
She is. She's fun to read. 100%.
Like her seduction. Also, I mean, just to skip to this, her seduction of Scott Summers. Like, have you ever seen anything like that in X-Men or
loved it.
Comic book that like real romance sort of thing?
That was great.
I loved it because he's more at home with Emma Frost than he ever was with Jean or Madeline.
Yeah, like it, but it's very real life in a sense. Like that's how relationships destruct.
Well, I mean,
he's got more of a connection with this other woman than he does his own wife.
Well, Johnny pointed out Johnny just had up the image of her that's Emma dressed as Phoenix to kind of get Scott. To get Scott into it, you know what I mean, and like that has layers upon layers.
It does, because he married Madeline Pryor only because she looked like Jean Grey.
You're right, exactly. So
it's like cosplay,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but also she comes from the Hellfire Club, and then you see everything that she has already done before in the Hellfire Club applied to one of the greatest leaders in all of comic book superheroes. I think that only he's surpassed by Captain America, and that's it. But he has his flaws, and he's able to show them. Again, I didn't know that part about that Claremont, that he was not proud about what he was doing or he was not into it. But I think that Morrison really took things to a new level, because everything was being just redone and rehashed. And we have seen a lot of stories that Claremont did in a better way back in the 70s and 80s. And really, there is a new ground for Grant Morrison and where he took things forward.
No, 100%.
Well, I was going to say, just to jump off that, Grant Morrison was part of like a new British wave of writer. That's sort of, I want to say like sort of after Alan Moore sort of thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Grant Morrison, Mark Millar, Warren Ellis, and I want to say Alan Moore, just to put him in that club.
And you can throw Garth Ennis in there.
Ennis.
Oh yeah, Garth Ennis. There you go, Garth Ennis. Those four writers really did more to redefine comic book writing in this era than probably any group of writers I can think of.
Yeah, they deconstructed it. Yeah,
probably since Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, to be honest. Like, they really laid the groundwork for this adult wave of graphic novels and comic book storytelling that we still live with.
Right.
Piggybacking on what you just mentioned, also I was going to mention this in where the street of Genosha is being destroyed. You can see that kind of like Madison Avenue street. Like, of course, it reverberates from New York, right? But what caught my attention as well is that in one of the signs, there is a girl from Peter Milligan's run on X-Force. And I think that Grant Morrison is just saying there, this is the only other worthy X book out there besides the X-Men. Yeah, and he acknowledges that because he knows that these Brit guys really are thinking outside of the box and really redefining everything that they can, and taking it as far as the Comic Codes Authority could take them.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you mentioned, I'm sorry, but Josh, you mentioned the Authority, and that talent was on full display. And I think it was one of the Frank Quiley issues that Mark Millar, Orwell, and Ellis was writing, where if you didn't know any better, you would swear it was Grant Morrison doing it.
Yeah.
How they're playing with reality, how they're playing with timelines of story. It's incredible.
And also, what's it called? When one of the things that Josh mentioned was what's it called? Like how the book plays with his emotions, right?
Yep.
Every issue plays with your emotions. Like the end of Imperial, when Xavier, when he's finally able to walk again after Zorn, he cures everybody of the nano sentinels that's been given the flu. And Beast's like, Xavier, don't move, Professor. I have your chair, sir. Thanks, dude, but I don't need it no more.
Oh yeah.
That was good. That I like to see that, but it's like it felt like a gut punch compared to what happened later. And Beast throwing a jab at Trish Tilby, his old reporter girlfriend, talking about, I'm not interested in no human relationship right now. In fact, I think I might be gay. I'm like, yeah, take that. After you said that you wouldn't date me because of rumors about bestiality, that's what you get.
You're right. No, I love that. I think that. Oh, Derek, you're muted.
Sorry for that, guys. I had to unplug my phone here. It shouldn't happen again. But just to jump off of what you just said there, Cy, and a theme that shows up in the story. And I know that they were talking about this with the movies a bit, but in terms of sexuality, there's some really progressive ideas going on here.
Oh, yeah.
And Grant Morrison totally plays with, mutants being like homosexuals in terms of at the time and still to this day, some of it in terms of oppression, in terms of hiding yourself, in terms of hiding who you really are. And but in this story, coming out in this Grant Morrison run, coming out is really an analogy for mutation, right? And he's playing with that concept the whole time, and it's fascinating to watch, and it's amazing how progressive it was and how it still rings true to this day in terms of subject matter and personal transformation that these characters are going through along the way.
Absolutely.
And
Andrew, sorry, real quick, let me jump in here. Andrew's asking, when did Emmett get her diamond powers? It's in this run. Like this is the run where she gets her diamond powers. Like Morrison just massages it in there, and then boom, we're off into a new direction with this character. So this is the book to pick up if you're looking for it. Sorry, Si, what were you about to say?
I was going to say I forgot.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's jump ahead. I don't think we're going to get to Riot At Xavier's this week, but we'll definitely jump back into it next week. But what's up, Josh?
Can we go back a little bit to Imperial? I don't think that we have talked about enough.
Go for it. What you want to say? Go
right. So let's just get it out of the gate, right? I think that Igor Corday is a great artist. I have read that Batman Tarzan book. It's amazing. And I think that he was handling like 3 books in at the same time that he was doing New X-Men, and New X-Men was getting the least of his attention. You can see this panel. It's an okay panel. It's not so bad. But like there are some other numbers, like the fight with the Shear, like the colorists have to complete everything that the drawings couldn't do, right? But besides that, I have never understood how Marvel, having a talent of over 30 more than capable artists, could have drawn this book. I mean, easily, I could think of Sean Chen, which was doing another Chris Claremont, I think it was X-Men The End, and also Salvador La Roca. I mean, these 2 guys could have easily jumped into New X-Men super fast and super easy. And I think that the quality of the book wouldn't have been hurt as much as it did with this drawing.
I think we already answered that question with the story of how Ethan Van Sciver got kicked off the comic. Because I remember seeing Igor Corday after his art style, and it's such a shock, especially compared to Frank Quietly's work too. Like it's just a huge stylistic shift, and maybe he was suffering because he was working on so many books. Because this is the artist I was alluding to, being some of the, I guess, not the crispest art you could ask for compared to Frank Quietly's work, but it's not terrible. It does the job. But
it works I think it works for the more visceral aspects of the book, really, like the monster, like the more deformed mutants.
Well,
really.
like I don't know if you can see this panel here with this Sheila.
Oh my god!
Right.
But,
no, I mean,
that's a great image.
In all fairness, yeah, I know, like Josh is laughing. I mean, look, but in all fairness, like she is being controlled by, I think, Cassandra Nova in that shot too. So there's also that as well. Yeah, Cordy's interesting in that, like, so I actually did like a little bit of research a few years ago about him, and it's kind of interesting. And I think there's some truth to what you said, because like apparently Cordy was producing artwork for Marvel for 3 or 4 monthly books, all at the same time.
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
Top of my mind, he was doing Ex-Soldier, which they couldn't use the
Soldier
title
X,
cable because of some lawsuit with
Wi-Fi,
something, right?
Soldier X.
Exactly.
And he had done work before with Marvel, I think, like in the late '90s, but this was like kind of his return. Also, he's actually a phenomenal painter. Like that's the other wild thing about this is like, if you actually look up his paintings, and like you can tell it's Igor Corday, but like it's just they're excellent, they're amazing. And eventually he got fired in 2004 because of like the heavy fan criticism, and so he got booted out of Marvel. And then he went on to work for Delcourt and some of the other European publishers as well.
And sexuality played a lot in this book as well too. Like in New Worlds, when we finally see that Angel and Beak hooking up with each other, and like the affairs with Emma and Scott, and the almost hookup between Wolverine and Jean Grey. Jean goes to kiss Wolverine, and he just tells her what we already know. We both know the deal. It would never work between us.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, that's the beautiful thing
great.
too.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the things I loved about that. Because Wolverine turns a corner. Like
he does.
He's
not trying to hook up with her.
I think it's because of Morrison's X-Men that we're allowed to get things like Wolverine and the X-Men down the line, where he becomes headmaster of the school, like of the Jean Grey school, right? It's because Morrison kind of pushed him past like this impulsive, wife-stealing, berserker rage like madman into like I'm like basically look. I've been around for like 100 years. Like, there's no reason I should be this impulsive anymore.
Well, this was also around when they finally unveiled Wolverine's actual origin.
Yeah.
So
origin 1 through 6.
Yeah, and that was a big deal back then as a Wolverine fan. Like, he was my favorite character. That happened. So there was less mystery around the character to begin with, and even in Wolverine's own storylines. Maybe the only other one was Frank Miller's run before he got his own regular series for a while. This was the most character development we really got from Wolverine, and also the Weapon X program.
Yeah.
Like, we finally actually explored the Weapon X program in a way that wasn't just new characters showing up.
Right,
Like it was the nature of the program and how deep into reality-altering science they were going.
Well, then that brings us to actually New Worlds, which I definitely want to touch on because we're getting real close to the hour now. But yeah, this is some more work by Cordy. I think Vince Skyver jumps in here at some point. Actually, no, it's all Cordy all the way through. This is actually really interesting because it unpacks the Weapon X program, right? And then we're going to get more of that as when we get into Assault on Weapon Plus. But also introduces us to, again, one of my favorite X-Men characters in the last 20 years, Phantom X, who is like, he's a product of Weapon X, and he's this sort of suave, like actually he's based on a French movie character whose name I'm totally blanking on right now. I think it's
I know what you're talking
Thomas.
What is it again?
Phantom. So this character, I think it's called Phantomas.
Phantomas. Okay, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, he's actually just a fun character, and also he flirts with Jean a lot, which is kind of like great because it juxtaposes what's going on with Charles and Scott and Emma. So what do you guys think of New Worlds?
I like how New Worlds begins with their going through the ashes of what happened in Uncanny X-Men with the X-Corps, Banshee's X-Corps, and Xavier having been outed by Cassandra Nova. He's running with that concept now, and he's like, okay, now we're going to have mutants that volunteer rescue missions all over the world. It's an X-Corps in England, X-Corps in India, and they're staffed with other mutants from other X teams, right? Which goes to show that Morrison isn't ignoring continuity. And Phantom X is like... He leaves you guessing every issue. It's like, okay, you're an action dude, but are you French? Are you a mutant? Right. What's up with you? Right. And it also introduced the fact that Xavier has money. Xavier's a billionaire, and he's got at least three other millionaires as part of the X-Men too. It's like, we know the X-Men got money. Thank you for pointing that out at last.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do you think? Do you think it's who do you think the other millionaires are? Is it probably Beast and Emma?
No, it's Archangel. He's one because he's old money. Emma Frost, she's also old money. And the third one could be either Psylocke because she was a former supermodel, or Beast or Forge because they hold patents with their inventions.
There you go.
You also forgot about Sunspot. He's, I think, a billionaire in Brazil.
That's right. Yeah, he's old money. He's old money. Yeah, his dad.
He's old money.
So, Brazilianaire.
Yeah, I love this. The thing that I like the most is that I have always wondered, like, I think it's kind of like the mindset of American writers to write their stories only in the US, right? But I really love Morrison's taking them to China, taking them to Middle East, taking them to France. So he's moving around. Like, you can feel that this is really a global story. When he includes that Master Mold is in Ecuador, I think that he really gives us this idea that X-Men are really a global team. Well, maybe the Avengers and Fantastic Four are more universal. superheroes,
New York.
right? The story when he meets Dust and Phantom X there in the Middle East, it was fantastic because you have never seen Wolverine surrounded by just deserts and sand, right? Like you can see him in the jungle, you can see him in the past or in the future or whatever, but never in another country. And top of that, Middle East. And then the introduction of Phantom X, it was superb. I mean, sexuality, I think it's another of the themes that he touches upon in all of his run. Like he makes these characters either super sexy or average sexy or not sexy, right? Like we mentioned with Angel and Big. And you can see that Emma and Phantom X are like the high-end super characters. Like these guys are what I mean. Brad Pitt was envious of Phantom X, the way that he was able to flirt with them, and how he mentions to Jean Grey, like, "Oh, I see a tilt in your hip that you like me." Like, oh my god, that was so amazing.
She didn't object to it. She knew he was right.
We also
he was a player.
No, he was. No.
Well, so I just want to chime in real quick about one issue that's not super important, but just to juxtapose it with these billionaires and super sexy characters. The issue, I think it's called Of Living and Dying, and it focuses on Zorn going through, I think, a New York neighborhood or something. And so
Alphabet City.
Alphabet City, there you go. And it's such a diversion in this whole, in this whole arc. But it's one of the few issues of comic books that actually made me cry. So no spoilers. I highly recommend it. But I was like tearing up at the end of this issue because, again, it goes back to the exact opposite of what we're talking about. Like Grant Morrison's able to make this incredible, like James Bond-like character in Phantom X and everything else. But then he takes us right back to the whole pathetic side of humanity, and he's able to just extract so much meaning out of it. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and like what we were saying earlier about Grant Morrison's work being prophetic, like, is he magic predicting the future? It's like what happens in that issue, Derek, what happens at the end of it with the police officers and whatnot, that reflects what we've been seeing a lot in the real world for the past several years now.
And I think that's one of the reasons it hit me so hard. Again, I don't want to spoil it because it is like a beautiful little short story, but it was very prescient in a lot of ways. I think that's so you're touching on something there personal for me, but yeah.
No, like I want to point out that that issue is drawn by Jean-Paul Leon, who
R.I.P.
who recently passed away.
Oh no!
Shout out to Earth X.
Very recently, like a month ago.
Oh yeah, Earth X.
Yeah, we actually might talk about that at a future roundtable. I think that's another one that might have to be a two-parter. So the Phoenix really shows out here, and one thing I personally felt is like this feels different from other Phoenix resurrections, right? I mean, like, we've seen her come back in Fantastic Four. We saw her come back later again, like very briefly, she died and came back during the John Byrne return in the early 90s with Will Spartacio. Jean dies and comes back all the time. But there was something really interesting about this, and I wish I could pinpoint what it is, but what did you guys think about the Phoenix resurrection?
I would say what Morrison was doing with that was he was trying to incorporate the Phoenix resurrection with Jean's secondary mutation. Talking about your secondary mutation is that you're going to become the Phoenix itself. So he wanted to give like his own take on the Phoenix, like not have it like destroy worlds and whatnot, just to show that Jean can take it pretty much. And everybody's all worried about Jean showing more power and whatnot. Worried about her coming to Phoenix levels, was like, nah, Jean, she's got this. And I think that's what Morrison was trying to say. Like, I'm getting more powerful. I know I'm Phoenix. I'm getting at Phoenix levels, but don't worry about it. All right, it's good. I got this.
I also think that leans into like I think Morrison's kind of playing the hits in terms of the X-Men, like throughout this run. Like he's kind of like, okay, we're gonna Charles Xavier can walk again, and Jean Grey is going to die and come back, and like he's checking all the boxes of things that we've always been familiar with. Someone was about to talk? Who was it? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that going back to the relationship with Scott Summers, it's almost like the Phoenix coming back is like a metaphor again for their relationship.
Oh yeah,
because it's coming back. She's not spending any time with her husband. She's not even thinking about her husband, and that's the reason he goes with Emma. Right? Like that's what, but it's, I don't know. Like she's turning into a different person, so she can't focus on her own marriage.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's sort of a metaphor for life in some ways. That happens to a lot of people. But it's on top of it just being the classics, it's really used to drive her story forward in a way that I think it sort of has. Well, it wasn't done and since the Claremont run. Like
I agree with you.
The character, but he was like changing her life.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Sorry, I agree with you, but just one thing that you guys have to remember is that Scott is the one that pulled Jean apart to begin with, because he was possessed by Apocalypse in that as well. And then you can see in 114, there is a panel where they are meeting in that mind room that Xavier provides for them, and he's standing behind Beast, and even Jean is looking at him, and there's no dialogue. It's just those small details that Frank Whiteley was able to insert there. Like there's already a gap in the relationship.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and Wolverine kept picking at that in the little small talk conversation that he would have with
on
Scott.
He'd
be like, "What's it called? If you need a shoulder to cry on, I'm here." But then he hits him with this. All I'm saying is, bro, a man's got to mow his own lawn. I'm like, how'd you get that in the book?
Right.
I caught that.
For me, the thing about the Phoenix is I really love the way that Grant was able to handle it, because he did it like Chris Claremont, right? Like, you don't get, boom, I'm the most powerful mutant in the world. Like, he was doing it gradually, right? Every single issue, it was a step forward to becoming, I think, what she already was, one of the most powerful mutants. And that's why it resonates for me so much, that what I was telling you about the color purple, right? Purple is the color of power for Grant Morrison in this specific run. And Jean is the only one that is able to possess it, back and forth, moving in between that level of power, because she's the one that handles pretty much everything from beginning to end.
Absolutely. I wanted to do Riot At Xavier's, but we're going to hold off on that until next week. So I'm going to close this out for now with who do you guys think is the MVP of the series? And I'm going to start with okay. Josh is like, don't make me choose. What about? I think Sai kind of already said it, but who do you think is the MVP of this series?
Well, in terms of, I'm sorry, just in terms of artists or in terms of characters in the story, or
what?
It could be two questions.
Okay, it could be two questions. That's true. I'm going to say in terms of character, and then next week I'll ask you guys in terms of creators.
Oh man, that's a tough question. Who's the MVP of the series of the whole run? Okay, I will say this: Cyclops, not because he's my favorite character, but because of Morrison's final arc, which I will not talk about right now. But because of how that arc really was, he was a linchpin for it. I mean, he was the opening for Morrison's opening run on the New X-Men, and he was the end of it as well too. Think about it. The first and last page of Morrison's run begin and end with him.
Yeah, that's true. What about you, Josh? If you had to pick, what would it be?
If I had to pick, like when the run came out, I think it may have been Emma Frost. I mean, she was such a breakthrough character back then. I remember she even got her own miniseries afterwards because she was such a hot item for Marvel back then. But I think that maybe in the long run, like for now, I think it might be either Phantom X or Kid Omega. Like these characters are really impactful for the continuity of X-Men.
Yeah, and they do show up. I think Phantom X did they kill Phantom X? I thought they killed him off.
Yeah, they kind of did, and Xavier took over his body.
Okay.
So before Krakoa, Xavier was walking around in Phantom X's body, which is genetically made to look like his.
Okay, interesting. All right. Yeah, and I know Kid Omega's definitely still kicking around. Andrew says yes. Better not say Scott. Oh hell.
Too late for that. Too late for that, Andrew.
Too late. Read the book and let us know what you think, Andrew, because it might change your mind about Scott. I wasn't a big fan of Scott either until I read this. I'll be honest with you. He was not one of my favorite characters. And it wasn't until like Morrison's run, I was like, oh, you know what? Followed by Whedon's run, that I was like, oh, you know what? Scott's kind of a badass. Okay. I'm starting to understand this. What about you, Derek? MVP.
Well, Josh sort of stole Emma Frost from me, so I'll just go with my alternate choice. I'll go for Wolverine. Okay. You know what I mean? Just because he's in it from beginning to end, like really to the end. And it just, he was sort of unofficially this, but I think this really cemented his role as the heart and soul of the X-Men. And that was sort of happening in the movies anyway, if you couldn't tell. Like the movies have always been sort of Wolverine and the X-Men. But he's just always there. And I think it sort of explored his character in a way that we hadn't seen since the Frank Miller run. Was that Chris Claremont and Frank Miller?
That was Claremont and Frank Miller, yeah.
Yeah, since the Chris Claremont Frank Miller miniseries that really dived in his actual character. Okay. And I think we actually saw some more character development here, and his position in the team in X-Men history sort of solidified in a way that carries it through to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add something to what you mentioned about Wolverine?
Go for it.
What I really love about this run is, like, Wolverine was the Batman of X-Men, right? Like, because you couldn't have an X-Men without Wolverine, and he was like, sometimes the stories were only around him, everything was revolving around him, and I love the way that Morrison put him a little bit behind, right? It gave more room for the rest of the characters. So I really like Wolverine in this run, but because he was not in the spotlight, he was only used when needed.
Yeah,
I did like that.
So, like, Josh wanted me to ask, is it good now? But I kind of feel like we already answered that like about 5 or 6 different ways. I mean, is it good now, guys? Just course of a new X-Men. Is it good now still after all these years?
It still holds up. It still holds up for me. I mean, rereading what I had to for the podcast, it's like, wow. Even the rereading value of the book, it's almost like The Wire. I will say that.
Yeah, no, I definitely have picked up on every time I read it, I get something new out of it every single time.
Exactly. There's something I miss every time.
What about you, Derek?
Yeah, well, I'll never admit to crying over a comic ever again. Give you an idea of how, but yeah, I think it's absolutely good now. I mean, it might be the greatest pure modern era run of comics ever. As far as I'm concerned, I really can't think of any other run of comics that stretched this long and reinvented a team while still maintaining their character and delving into those characters at the same time. Like, this book is, in one hand, it's classic X-Men. It's everything good about the X-Men. On the other hand, it's exploring ideas and issues that are still relevant right now.
Yeah.
Relevant right now. And I'm sure there's other stories out there that do the exact same thing, but between the art and the quality of writing and the story overall, I mean, I just can't think of anything that really compares to it in that sense. I'm sure I'm wrong, because, you know, there's all sorts of stories out there, but for a top tier, like, cornerstone team like the X-Men is for Marvel, I can't think of anything else that's not a full universe type thing. Like Civil War maybe, or something like that.
Right. What about you, Josh?
Oh man, for me it does. This is like wine; it gets better with time. If I try to see it like this exists only in this pocket, right? Like I don't try to see like the entire continuity, because what will happen further on with the main villain of the story, a lot of the characters. Like, but if you look at it contained, this is one of the best X-Men runs of all time, not only for the relevancy about the topics that it touches upon, because it does have something that a lot of comic books are really not having these days, and that is humanity. A lot of humanity, a lot of emotions. I was a youngster back then. I did not have enough money to buy me a lot of stuff, so I even have to not buy food money and use my food money to buy these comics. It was the only thing that it was monthly. I was eagerly waiting for the next issue, and I was shocked. I was scared. I was sad. I was happy. I thought I was one of the coolest persons in the world just by reading this book. And that is very hard to do, because the impact that it created, not only in the reader, not only in me, but in every reader that has touched upon this book, it's been really impactful. I can think on top of my mind two of the greatest writers that we have right now, Jason Aaron and Al Ewing in Immortal Hulk. They mentioned that this run was a huge impact for them, and it was a huge inspiration of it. How Jason Aaron picked up a lot of things when he was doing Wolverine and the X-Men, and how Al Ewing is doing a lot of that body horror, and I think it was piggyback from this thing. like Cassandra Nova when she's possessing the Trask guy and she's putting her hands between his face. That image can come out of any Immortal Hulk issue right now.
Yeah.
Look at that, and they were really bold doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so disturbing.
It is.
Right.
I like
It
it.
is. It is perfect.
It is.
But,
It's perfect.
but
It's a great book. I think it still holds up pretty good.
No, yeah. I look for me. I was reading this in college, and I feel like that's around the time that for most people, your mind is expanding, right? You're starting to be exposed to other things, and so this book kind of dropped at the absolute perfect time for me. I was willing, you know what I mean, and I think that's maybe the key thing that you have to do with this X-Men book. It's a book about evolution, particularly Grant Morrison's run. And it was interesting to kind of like experience that as my thought processes were evolving, not to get too woo-woo, too pie in the sky here, but that's kind of what it felt like. So I've always loved this run, and I'm looking forward to part 2 in another week. So I want to thank you guys. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Cy. Thank you, Derek, for coming along. Josh and Cy will be joining us again next week. Derek's going to tag out of this one, and we're going to bring on Rocco Jerome and Mystical Green Beanie into the fray. It's going to be a mess, but it's going to be a glorious mess, and I'm looking forward to it. Again, thank you very much, guys. Let's do shout outs real quick. Derek, where can people find you?
You can find me at Action A Go Go on Twitter and Instagram. You can also purchase my novels. I've got 2 novels available on Amazon. The first is The Vicious Game. The next is Knuckle Crack Bone, and would love to get you a copy and see what you think.
All right, cool. And what about you, Cy? Where can people find you?
On Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at Shaq_House83. And on Facebook, and this is a shameless plug for my group, join my group, the official Marvel Universe. All your Marvel needs will be met there.
There you go. It's a great place for the conversation, too. And Josh, where can people find you? You got anything you want to shout out?
Right now, they can find me on Instagram at Josh Loves Comics, and then also I'm working on building up a Facebook page. It's going to be called Comic Book Analysis and Critiques. We're going to be delving a little bit deeper into the hidden meaning and stuff that is there in the comics that it's in our face every day, and we might not realize about that.
Okay, all right. And actually, you know what? I'm going to follow you right now because I didn't realize you were on Instagram. So there you go. Boom. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys, and hopefully it's been insightful, hopefully it's been interesting, and hopefully you find a new appreciation for this run, or maybe just reliving this run all over again. And hey, we'll be back next Friday at 3 p.m. for the second part of this, where we will discuss Riot at Xavier's, because we didn't get a chance to talk about that this week, and Murder at the Mansion, Assault on Weapon Plus, Planet X, and Here Comes Tomorrow. So thank you for joining us, and hey, guys, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out. And I will see you at the spinner rack. Catch you later.
Later.